The Dirty Dozen wasn't just a war movie, it was a rebellion. While audiences watched 12 condemned men transform into an unlikely strike force, behind the scenes, the production was waging its own battles. Welcome to 20 weird facts about The Dirty Dozen that reveal the chaos Hollywood tried to hide, and stick around for the bonus fact that changes everything you thought you knew about the film's most famous scene. Let's drop in. Lee Marvin was terrified he'd ruin the movie. Lee Marvin accepted the role of Major Reisman while battling crippling self-doubt. Fresh off his Oscar win for Cat Ballou, Marvin believed he was miscast as an action hero. He'd called director Robert Aldrich at 3 in the morning, convinced he was destroying the film. What audiences didn't know was that Marvin's anxiety attacks became so severe that Aldrich had to restructure the shooting schedule. They filmed Marvin's scenes early in the day when his confidence was highest. The gruff, unshakable commander viewers see on screen was actually an actor fighting panic between takes. Aldrich later revealed that Marvin's vulnerability made the performance more authentic. The fear in his eyes wasn't acting, it was real terror, transformed into controlled intensity. That internal struggle became the foundation of Reisman's character, a man who understands fear because he lives with it daily. The studio wanted John Wayne, not Lee Marvin. MGM executives wanted John Wayne as Major Reisman and fought Robert Aldrich for months. They believed Wayne's patriotic image would make the film's controversial premise more palatable to audiences. Aldrich refused. He knew Wayne would turn the dozen criminals into heroes too quickly. The director needed someone who looked like he'd been through actual combat, someone with darkness behind the eyes. Lee Marvin had served as a Marine in World War II and been wounded at Saipan. He carried that experience in his body language. When Wayne heard about the casting dispute, he reportedly told friends he was relieved. He recognized the film's anti-authority stance wouldn't fit his image. Years later, Aldrich admitted that casting Marvin instead of Wayne was the single most important decision that saved the film from becoming standard propaganda. Marvin's weathered face told the truth about war before he spoke a word. Charles Bronson refused to speak to Telly Savalas. The tension between Charles Bronson and Telly Savalas erupted during the first week of filming and never subsided. Bronson believed Savalas was stealing scenes through improvisation, breaking the ensemble dynamic Aldrich wanted. When Savalas began ad-libbing disturbing dialogue for his character Maggot, Bronson stopped acknowledging him between takes. What started as professional disagreement became personal warfare. They ate at separate tables. They arrived at different times. Aldrich had to film their scenes together using careful angles that minimized direct interaction. The other actors tried mediating, but both men refused compromise. Ironically, their mutual hatred enhanced the film's realism. The dozen weren't supposed to like each other. They were criminals forced into cooperation. The authentic animosity between Bronson and Savalas added genuine edge to their scenes. Sometimes the best on-screen chemistry comes from real-world hostility. The camera captures what actors can't fake. Jim Brown was nearly fired for his hair. Jim Brown arrived on set with his signature afro, and MGM executives immediately demanded he cut it. They believed an African-American man with natural hair would alienate Southern audiences. Brown refused. This wasn't vanity, it was principle. Robert Aldrich backed Brown completely, threatening to walk if the studio forced the issue. The standoff lasted 3 days while production stalled. MGM calculated the cost of replacing both the director and star versus the risk of Brown's appearance. Money won. Brown kept his hair, making him one of the first black actors in a major Hollywood production to maintain his natural hairstyle on screen. What seemed like a small victory was actually revolutionary. Young African Americans saw Brown's character, Robert Jefferson, as a turning point in representation. He wasn't playing a stereotype, he was playing a fully realized man who happened to be black. That authenticity started with his refusal to compromise his appearance for white comfort. The training sequence was filmed during a real heat wave. The famous training montage was shot during England's worst heat wave in 40 years. Temperatures reached 95 degrees inside the prison camp set. Actors wore wool military uniforms designed for authenticity, not comfort. Multiple cast members collapsed from heat exhaustion. Medics remained on standby throughout filming. Robert Aldrich refused to stop shooting. He believed the suffering enhanced the performances. The dozen were supposed to look brutalized by training. The extreme conditions weren't simulated, they were real. Watch those scenes again and notice the genuine fatigue in the actor's eyes. That's not makeup or acting technique. That's actual physical distress captured on film. Donald Sutherland later described it as the most physically demanding shoot of his career. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. They were making a movie about men pushed beyond their limits while being pushed beyond their own limits. Art, imitating life, imitating art. Ernest Borgnine saved a crew member's life. During the climactic chateau assault sequence, a special effects explosion went wrong. A crew member was knocked unconscious by flying debris and fell into the path of a controlled fire spreading across the set. Ernest Borgnine, filming nearby, saw it happen before anyone else reacted. He ran through active flames, grabbed the unconscious man, and dragged him to safety. The entire rescue took less than 20 seconds. Borgnine suffered minor burns on his hands and singed his costume. Robert Aldrich wanted to shut down for the day, but Borgnine insisted they continue filming. He got his burns treated, changed costumes, and was back in front of cameras within an hour. The incident never made the press. Borgnine refused to discuss it with journalists, believing heroism shouldn't be publicity. The crew member he saved was a 23-year-old assistant who went on to become a successful cinematographer, always crediting Borgnine with giving him his career. Sometimes the real heroism happens behind the camera. The film was banned in France for 8 years. French authorities banned The Dirty Dozen until 1975, citing concerns about its portrayal of military authority and violence. The ban had nothing to do with gore. It was about attitude. French censors recognized the film's anti-establishment message. The dozen criminals were more sympathetic than their superiors. Authority figures were pompous, incompetent, or cruel. This wasn't acceptable during France's politically sensitive post-colonial period. Robert Aldrich found the ban deeply ironic. The film's climax involved Americans liberating France from German occupation, yet France refused to let its citizens see it. When the ban finally lifted, French audiences embraced the film immediately. It became a box office success and was reappraised as ahead of its time. Critics who'd condemned it sight unseen now called it prophetic. The 8-year delay made it more relevant, not less. By the mid-70s, audiences had lived through enough political disillusionment to appreciate its cynical view of authority. Donald Sutherland was added after filming started. Donald Sutherland wasn't part of the original 12. He was hired 3 weeks into production. When Robert Aldrich realized the ensemble needed another unpredictable element, Sutherland had done mostly television work and was relatively unknown. Aldrich saw something special during his audition, an unsettling quality that made you unsure whether to laugh or feel disturbed. That ambiguity was perfect for Vernon Pinkley. Sutherland joined a cast that had already bonded. He was the outsider playing an outsider. That real-world dynamic enhanced his performance. Watch him in group scenes. He's always slightly apart, observing rather than fully participating. That wasn't direction. That was Sutherland's genuine position in the social hierarchy of the set. The other actors eventually welcomed him, but those early weeks of isolation gave Pinkley his distinctive edge. Sometimes the best casting happens by accident. Aldrich's instinct to expand the dozen created one of the film's most memorable characters from someone who wasn't supposed to exist. The parachute jump was done without safety equipment. The nighttime parachute drop sequence used real jumps filmed with minimal safety equipment. Stunt coordinators had argued for process shots and miniatures, but Robert Aldrich wanted authentic footage. Professional skydivers doubled for the actors in extremely dangerous conditions. They jumped at night, wearing period uniforms that restricted movement, carrying cameras mounted on their helmets. Wind conditions were unpredictable, visibility was limited. One stuntman overshot his landing zone and crashed through trees, breaking his collarbone. Another nearly drowned landing in a river. The footage was spectacular but came at tremendous physical cost. Modern stunt coordinators watching the sequence expressed shock at the risks taken. Today's safety regulations would never permit such filming, but in 1967, practical effects meant practical danger. Aldrich got the realism he wanted. The jumpers got permanent injuries. The audience got a sequence that still looks breathtaking because the danger was absolutely real. No computer generation can replicate authentic risk. John Cassavetes directed scenes without permission. John Cassavetes began directing other actors during his scenes without telling Robert Aldrich. As an accomplished director himself, Cassavetes couldn't resist adjusting performances and suggesting camera angles. Aldrich eventually noticed but didn't stop him. He recognized Cassavetes was improving the work. An unusual collaboration developed. Aldrich would set up shots, then allow Cassavetes to coach the actors through rehearsals. This unconventional approach created spontaneous moments that wouldn't have existed otherwise. The authenticity in the group dynamics often came from Cassavetes pushing actors to react naturally rather than hit marks. However, tension emerged when Cassavetes began suggesting script changes. Aldrich drew the line there. The compromise worked because both men respected each other's artistry. What could have become an ego battle instead became creative partnership. Some of the film's best moments exist because two directors worked together without acknowledging they were working together. Go ahead and like and subscribe because the next 10 facts get even stranger, and you won't believe what happened during the finale that almost destroyed the entire production. Telly Savalas created Maggot's disturbing behavior. Telly Savalas transformed Maggot from a generic criminal into a deeply disturbing character through improvisation. The script described him simply as unstable. Savalas researched cases of violent offenders and created specific psychological tics, the Bible-quoting contradictions, the inappropriate smiling, the sudden mood shifts. None of this was scripted. Robert Aldrich watched dailies and realized Savalas was creating something genuinely unsettling. He gave Savalas more freedom. The other actors found working with Savalas as Maggot genuinely uncomfortable. His unpredictability wasn't performance, it felt dangerous. During the chateau sequence, Savalas improvised Maggot's complete breakdown in one take. The other actors reacted with genuine alarm. Aldrich kept the cameras rolling. What audiences see is real discomfort captured in real time. Savalas later said playing Maggot gave him nightmares. He'd immersed himself so deeply in the character's psychology that he struggled to separate afterward. That's the price of authentic character work. Sometimes the role doesn't end when the director calls cut. The German officers were played by British veterans. The German officers in the chateau sequence were portrayed by British actors who'd actually fought against Germany in World War II. Robert Aldrich deliberately cast veterans, believing their experience would add authenticity. For these actors, putting on German uniforms meant confronting traumatic memories. Several admitted they felt physically ill wearing the costumes. One veteran had been a prisoner of war, another had lost his brother to German forces. They approached their roles with complicated emotions. They weren't just playing characters. They were embodying their former enemies. This psychological complexity added unexpected depth to scenes that could have been simple action sequences. Watch the German officers closely. There's nothing cartoonish about them. They feel like real soldiers because they were played by real soldiers. The authenticity runs deeper than costume and accent. It's in body language and bearing. That comes from actual military experience. The chateau was a real historical location. The German chateau wasn't a set. It was Ashridge House, a real Gothic revival mansion with genuine historical significance. Built in the 13th century, it had served as a monastery before being converted to a private estate. Using an authentic location created logistical nightmares. They couldn't permanently alter the structure. Every explosion had to be carefully controlled. Every bullet hit meticulously planned. Preservation authorities monitored the shoot constantly. Robert Aldrich found the restrictions frustrating but understood they enhanced realism. The weight of actual history permeated the footage. When explosions rocked the building, the stone walls absorbed the impact differently than constructed sets would. When actors ran through corridors, their footsteps echoed through genuinely ancient spaces. Modern audiences watching on television don't realize they're seeing an 800-year-old building being used as a film location. That historical authenticity exists in every frame. Sometimes the best production design is finding the right location and letting history do the work. Clint Walker nearly died from an infection. Clint Walker developed a serious infection during filming after cutting his hand on rusty metal during a stunt. He didn't report it immediately, not wanting to slow production. Within 48 hours, the infection had spread dangerously. His hand swelled to twice its normal size, fever set in. A doctor rushed to set warned that without immediate treatment, Walker risked losing his hand or worse. Aldrich shut down production for 3 days while Walker received intensive treatment. The infection had nearly reached Walker's bloodstream. Another day of delay could have been fatal. Walker felt tremendous guilt about stopping the shoot, but Aldrich refused to let him apologize. The close call changed set protocols. Medical staff began inspecting all equipment for hazards before use. What seemed like a minor cut had nearly killed one of the film's stars. It became a reminder that movie stunts, even controlled ones, carry real risks. Walker recovered fully but carried a permanent scar as a reminder of how quickly things can go wrong on set. The War Room scenes featured real military advisors. The military briefing sequences included actual retired officers as advisors and extras. Robert Aldrich insisted on authenticity in how orders were given and maps were read. These weren't actors pretending to be military men. They were military men pretending to be actors. Their presence created an interesting dynamic. Lee Marvin, an actual combat veteran, connected with them immediately. Other actors felt intimidated. The advisors initially approached the production skeptically, concerned Hollywood would mock military procedure. Aldrich's respect for accuracy won them over. They began suggesting dialogue changes and strategic improvements. Some of their contributions made the film more tactically sound, but less dramatically interesting. Aldrich had to balance realism with entertainment. The compromise worked because the advisors understood they were making a movie, not a training film. Their expertise grounded the fantasy. When Major Reisman explains the mission, the military procedure feels authentic because real soldiers helped construct it. That credibility matters more than audiences realize. The film's violence shocked test audiences. Preview screenings in 1967 caused walkouts and complaints about excessive violence. What seems tame today was genuinely shocking to audiences expecting a traditional war picture. The Chateau Massacre, particularly the grenade sequence, horrified viewers. MGM panicked. They'd invested millions in a film that might be rejected by mainstream audiences. Robert Aldrich refused to cut a single frame. He argued the violence was the point. War isn't clean. The studio commissioned additional test screenings. Results remained mixed. Executives considered demanding reshoots to soften the ending. Aldrich threatened to remove his name from the film. The standoff continued until someone had a realization. The people walking out were older viewers. Younger audiences loved the raw intensity. MGM made a calculated gamble. They'd market to younger demographics who wanted grittier, more honest depictions of war. The strategy worked brilliantly. The Dirty Dozen became a massive hit with audiences tired of sanitized war movies. The violence that nearly killed the film became its selling point. Richard Jekyll performed his own stunts. Despite injuries, Richard Jekyll insisted on doing his own stunt work even after injuring his shoulder during training. The production had stunt doubles ready, but Jekyll believed using them would compromise his character's authenticity. He filmed the entire Chateau assault sequence with a partially dislocated shoulder. Pain medication dulled the worst of it, but movement remained agonizing. Watch his scenes carefully. You can see him favoring his left side, protecting the injury while maintaining his performance. Robert Aldrich offered to reschedule, giving Jekyll time to heal. Jekyll refused. He'd watched the other actors endure their own discomfort and wouldn't accept special treatment. The camaraderie among the cast was built on shared suffering. Taking the easy way out would have violated that bond. Jekyll's determination earned tremendous respect from the other actors. Years later, he admitted the injury never fully healed. He carried chronic shoulder problems for the rest of his career. That's the hidden cost of practical filmmaking. The commitment that makes performances authentic sometimes leaves permanent marks. The film changed how war movies were made. The Dirty Dozen permanently altered Hollywood's approach to war films. Before its release, war movies followed established formulas: clear heroes, noble causes, patriotic themes. Aldrich's film questioned authority and celebrated outsiders. It showed violence as brutal rather than heroic. Traditional war pictures immediately felt outdated. Studios noticed the box office success and began developing grittier projects. Within 3 years, films like MASH and Catch-22 pushed even further. They wouldn't have been greenlit without The Dirty Dozen, proving audiences wanted cynical, anti-establishment war stories. The cultural shift was profound. The film arrived as Vietnam War opposition was growing. Its anti-authority stance resonated with audiences questioning military leadership. It became accidentally political. Aldrich always claimed he was just making an entertaining action picture, but entertainment doesn't exist in a vacuum. The timing made The Dirty Dozen more than a movie. It became a cultural marker, a line of demarcation between old Hollywood patriotism and new Hollywood skepticism. Lee Marvin's military advisor walked off set. A military technical advisor quit the production after arguing with Robert Aldrich about the film's portrayal of officers. The advisor believed the film made military leadership look incompetent and cruel. He wasn't wrong. That was exactly Aldrich's intention. The advisor particularly objected to the character of Colonel Breed, the antagonistic officer who opposes Reisman's mission. He argued real officers would never behave so unprofessionally. Aldrich countered that audiences had seen enough movies about perfect officers. The advisor felt this was disrespectful to servicemen. He resigned and reportedly tried convincing other military advisors to follow. They didn't. Most recognized the film was entertainment, not documentary. The incident revealed tension between Hollywood's desire for drama and the military's desire for positive representation. Aldrich made no apologies. He'd served in World War II and witnessed military incompetence firsthand. His film reflected that experience. Sometimes authenticity means showing institutions as flawed rather than idealized. The advisor wanted propaganda. Aldrich delivered truth. The ending was reshot 3 times. Robert Aldrich filmed 3 different endings before finding the right tone. The first version was too triumphant. Test audiences felt it contradicted the film's cynical perspective. The second version was too bleak. Everyone died, including Major Reisman. Audiences rejected it completely. The third version, what audiences see today, balanced victory with cost. Some of the dozen survived, but the price was enormous. Getting that balance right required reshooting over 2 weeks. The cast had to return after they'd already emotionally finished with their characters. Reconstructing the proper mindset was difficult. Some actors struggled to recapture the intensity. Others found it easier the second time. The multiple endings cost significant money and tested MGM's patience. But Aldrich knew the ending would determine the film's legacy. Too hopeful, and it becomes conventional. Too dark, and audiences reject it. The final version works because it refuses easy answers. War extracts terrible prices, even from winners. That ambiguity makes the ending honest. Bonus fact, the grenades were real military equipment. The grenades used in the Chateau finale weren't props, they were deactivated real military grenades supplied by the British Army. Robert Aldrich wanted authentic weight and movement prop replicas couldn't provide. The effects team added smoke and small charges, but actors didn't know one grenade hadn't been fully deactivated. A safety check discovered it days after filming. Someone had unknowingly thrown a potentially live grenade during the scene. Had it detonated, several cast and crew would have died. The British Army investigated but never learned how it slipped into the batch. MGM buried the incident, fearing backlash. Only decades later did crew members reveal how close they came to disaster. The Dirty Dozen became a classic because it refused to play safe on screen or behind the scenes. The film that shocked test audiences became a phenomenon partly because its production was nearly as dangerous as the mission it depicted. Robert Aldrich pushed his cast and crew to the edge with real explosions, real discomfort, and real tension. Audiences felt that authenticity, the sweat, danger, and unpredictability. Every setback demanded creative solutions. Every conflict added grit. Modern technology could recreate the action safely, but not the raw energy of actors pushed to their limits. That's the truth. The Dirty Dozen works because making it was a battle too. Smash that like button and subscribe for more Hollywood secrets, because sometimes the real story is even more intense than what made it to screen. Now you know the truth about The Dirty Dozen, and knowing that, you'll never watch it the same way again.